Okay, so you want to own an EV charging station. You find a parking lot, bolt some chargers to the ground, plug them into the grid, and then every day, dozens of electric car owners show up and pay you money to fill their batteries. You collect the cash automatically. You barely have to think about it. It sounds almost too clean, too obvious, like owning a gas station in 1955 when the roads were filling up with cars and anyone with a pump and a patch of land was printing money. That is exactly the comparison people are making right now. Electric cars are everywhere. Governments are spending billions to push people toward them. By the end of 2025, global electric vehicle sales had crossed 20 million units in a single year, roughly 1 in every 4 new passenger cars sold on the planet. In the United Kingdom, more than 1.75 million battery electric vehicles are already on the roads today. The United States federal government committed $5 billion through a single infrastructure program just to build out public charging networks. So naturally, you assume owning a piece of this must be like owning a toll booth on the only bridge in town. But here's what is actually happening on the ground. Inside these businesses, when the cameras are off and the spreadsheets are open, the reality of owning a charging station is completely different from what the headlines suggest. Some operators are genuinely making money. Many more are quietly losing it. And the gap between the two groups comes down to a handful of things that almost no one explains before you write the check. By the end of this, you will know exactly where the money comes from, where it disappears to, and what separates the stations that are thriving from the ones waiting for a miracle. People assume that charging stations sell electricity. They do not. Not really. The average commercial electricity price in the United States sits at around 13 cents per kilowatt hour. If your entire business model is buying electricity at 13 cents and selling it at a slight markup, you will never recover what it cost you to build the station in the first place. The math does not work. The margin is too thin. The upfront investment is too large. What charging stations actually sell is convenience, speed, reliability, time. Think about bottled water. Water that comes out of a municipal tap costs almost nothing, but people pay $2 for a plastic bottle at a petrol station because it is cold, it is right there, and they need it now. Nobody is buying the water. They are buying the immediate availability of it. Public fast charging works on exactly this principle. A driver on a highway in Texas does not care that electricity costs 13 cents at home. They need 60 miles of range in the next 20 minutes so they can reach the hotel. That is worth real money. That is why public fast chargers charge drivers anywhere from 45 cents to 85 cents per kilowatt hour, sometimes 5 times what the operator paid for the same electricity at the commercial rate. The business is not about electricity. It is about being in the right place, with the right equipment, at exactly the right moment. The smartest charging station operators do not rely on a single source of income. They build several streams and layer them together. The most direct one is the charging fee itself, billing drivers per kilowatt hour or per minute for the electricity they receive. This is the foundation, but it is rarely enough on its own. The second stream is idle fees. When a car finishes charging but the driver leaves it parked in the bay, it is blocking the charger from the next paying customer. So operators charge a penalty fee per minute once the charging is complete. This is high-margin income that also keeps the station moving efficiently. Third is memberships. Networks like ChargePoint, EVgo, and Electrify America in the United States offer monthly subscription plans where regular users pay a flat fee upfront in exchange for discounted rates per charge. This gives the operator something extremely valuable: predictable monthly revenue that arrives whether or not anyone actually shows up that day. Fourth is retail and food partnerships. This one surprises people. A charging session on a fast charger typically takes 15 to 45 minutes. The driver has to wait somewhere. Smart operators partner with coffee shops, restaurants, or convenience stores on site. Some stations make more from the coffee sold during the wait than from the electricity delivered to the car. The charging bay becomes a traffic generation tool. The retail operation is where the real money flows. Fifth is advertising. The screens on modern charging stations are not just for displaying charging status. They run targeted digital advertising for local businesses, car insurance companies, and consumer brands. High margin, completely automated, zero marginal cost per impression. Sixth is fleet contracts. Delivery companies, taxi operators, and corporate vehicle fleets need a reliable place to charge dozens of vehicles regularly. An operator who lands a multi-year fleet contract with a logistics company gets a guaranteed revenue baseline every single month, regardless of what the general public does. Seventh is carbon credits. In California, Oregon, and several other states, selling electricity as vehicle fuel generates certificates called low carbon fuel standard credits. These are sold to fuel companies legally required to offset their emissions. It is a government-created subsidy that flows directly into operating profit, entirely invisible to the driver. Not all charging equipment is the same. The type of charger you install determines almost everything else: your upfront cost, your customer, your revenue potential, and your ongoing expenses. The simplest is a level 1 charger, a standard household outlet running at about 1.2 kilowatts. This adds roughly 3 to 5 miles of range per hour. A full charge on a modern electric vehicle takes 12 hours or more. The hardware itself costs almost nothing, a few $100s. But at this speed, the only customers you will ever attract are people who park somewhere for an entire workday or an entire night. It is essentially useless for a public commercial business. Level 2 chargers operate on 240 volts and add 25 to 40 miles of range per hour. Hardware runs from about $500 to $5,000 per unit. Full installation at a commercial property, including the electrical work, permits, and panel upgrades, comes to roughly $7,000 to $15,000 per port. These are what you see at shopping centers, office parks, hotels, and apartment buildings. They work well anywhere drivers naturally sit for 2 to 8 hours. DC fast chargers are a completely different category. They push direct electrical current, not the alternating current of household wiring, into the vehicle at between 50 and 150 kilowatts. A typical charge session takes 30 to 60 minutes. Hardware costs between $15,000 and $75,000 per unit. But by the time you add the 3-phase electrical feed, the transformer, the trenching through concrete and asphalt, the permits, and the site construction, a single DC fast charger installed at a commercial location in the United States runs between $80,000 and $250,000. All in, for one charging port. Ultra-fast chargers, the liquid-cooled systems you find at Tesla supercharger stations and dedicated highway travel plazas, go even further, delivering 150 kilowatts to 480 kilowatts or more. These can add 400 to 800 miles of range in roughly 20 minutes. But the installed cost per port pushes past $200,000 and can go considerably higher if the local electrical grid needs upgrading. The economic rule is simple. The faster the charger, the more it costs, the more it earns per session, and the more brutal the consequences of having it sit idle. Here is where most investors hit their first wall. You budget for the chargers. You forget about everything else. The hardware, the physical unit you bolt to the ground, is often the least expensive part of the total project. What actually destroys early-stage budgets is everything that comes before the charger can even be switched on: electrical upgrades. The existing wiring in almost any commercial property was not designed to power multiple fast chargers simultaneously. Running multiple DC fast chargers at once requires enormous electrical capacity. That means a new transformer, heavy copper cables running from the nearest utility connection to the charging stalls, and often an entirely new electrical panel for the property. If the local distribution grid lacks excess capacity, which it frequently does in dense urban areas and along busy highways, the utility company will not automatically upgrade their infrastructure. In most states, the developer pays for that upgrade out of their own pocket. Utility infrastructure upgrades alone have added between $15,000 and more than $100,000 to individual fast charging projects. Trenching. Running the conduit and cables underground through an existing parking lot means cutting through asphalt and concrete, which costs roughly $75 to $150 per linear foot. A charging station at the far end of a parking lot from the main electrical panel can easily require several hundred feet of trenching, permits, and engineering. Every local jurisdiction has its own rules: electrical load calculations, civil engineering drawings, zoning approvals, weights and measures certifications in states that require certified electricity meters. The soft costs of getting permission to operate add thousands more before construction even begins. And there is a timing problem that has burned dozens of operators in recent years. During supply chain disruptions, utility-grade pad-mounted transformers, the large green metal boxes that step voltage down to usable levels, had lead times of up to 65 weeks. That meant investors who had already signed leases and broken ground were waiting more than a year just to connect their chargers to power, all while the rent, the loan payments, and the overhead kept accumulating. Two identical chargers, same brand, same power level, same software, same pricing, 2 miles apart. One makes money, one loses it. The only difference is where they are. This is the fundamental truth of the charging business. Location is not one factor among many. It is the factor. Everything else is secondary. The reason is that electric vehicles are charged where they are naturally parked. Unlike a petrol station, where drivers make a detour specifically to refuel, charging happens as a side effect of being somewhere else. The business must be planted somewhere that people already go, already stay, and already leave their cars unattended for a predictable amount of time. Highway rest stops and motorway service areas are among the best locations in the country right now. Drivers are already stopping. They have nowhere else to be for 20 to 30 minutes. They cannot leave the car and come back later. High-power fast chargers in these locations command premium prices, 45 to 60 cents per kilowatt hour, and drivers pay without complaint because there is no alternative. In metropolitan areas like Los Angeles, New York, and Miami, fast charger utilization rates already average between 25 and 35%. On busy interstate corridors, it goes higher. Supermarkets are exceptional locations for a different reason. A grocery run takes 45 to 60 minutes. A 50 kilowatt to 150 kilowatt charger fills roughly 80% of most vehicles during that window. The customer was already there. Walmart accelerated its charging network deployment aggressively in 2026 for exactly this reason. The charger brings in a wealthier, more frequent customer, and those customers spend money inside while they wait. Workplaces and office parks are ideal for slower level 2 chargers. Employees park for 6 to 8 hours. There is no urgency. A 7 kilowatt level 2 charger is perfectly sufficient. The installation cost is a fraction of fast charging hardware. The demand on the electrical grid is minimal, and the utilization is extremely predictable. 5 days a week, the bays fill up automatically. Hodls run overnight level 2 charging. The vehicle charges completely between check-in and breakfast. No drama, no demand spikes. The locations that tend to fail are the ones that seem logical but misread the actual behavior of drivers. A standalone fast charger in the middle of a quiet suburban retail strip with no anchor tenant and no reason to stop generates almost no revenue regardless of how modern the equipment is. You would think deciding what to charge is simple. It is not. Charge too much and drivers, who can see competing stations in real time on their phones, will simply drive to the next network. Charge too little and you cannot recover your costs. The sweet spot is narrow and shifts constantly based on local competition, the cost of electricity on any given day, and what your neighboring businesses are doing. Most operators use one of 3 pricing models. Per kilowatt hour is the most transparent. You pay for exactly the energy delivered to your battery. Per minute is simpler operationally but can penalize drivers whose cars accept power slowly, which creates customer frustration. Hybrid models combine a flat connection fee with a per kilowatt hour rate and often layer on idle fees that escalate the longer a car sits in the bay after charging is done. Regulations complicate this further. In a number of American states, the law historically prevented anyone who was not a licensed utility company from selling electricity by the kilowatt hour. This forced charging operators to bill by the minute, which made it nearly impossible for drivers to compare costs fairly across networks. Most major states have since changed these laws, but the patchwork of state-by-state rules still creates administrative headaches for any operator trying to run a consistent national pricing strategy. A charging station that nobody is using earns exactly $0 per hour, but it does not cost $0 per hour. The software license is running, the cellular data connection is transmitting, the land lease is accumulating, the insurance is ticking forward, the charger is simply sitting there, costing money, and generating nothing. This is fundamentally different from a gas station, where a fuel pump is refueling a car in 4 minutes and is free again for the next customer. A fast charger occupies the same equipment for 20 to 60 minutes per session. An overnight level 2 charger ties up a port for 8 hours per vehicle. This makes utilization rate, the percentage of time in a given day that a charger is actively delivering power, the single most important financial metric in the business, according to Perrin, which tracks fast charging performance across the United States. The national average utilization rate for public DC fast chargers in the second quarter of 2026 was approximately 15.8%. For roughly 20 out of every 24 hours, the average fast charger in the country is sitting completely idle. Busy metropolitan markets do better. The 25 to 35% utilization seen in New York, Los Angeles, and Miami makes the financial math work. In quieter markets, the numbers are significantly worse. The industry benchmark for where a fast charging station genuinely starts generating healthy margins is around 30 to 50% utilization. Getting from 15% to 30% often takes years as the local EV fleet grows organically. You buy electricity at a commercial rate and sell it to drivers at a retail markup. That sounds like a reliable spread. Then you get your first monthly utility bill. Commercial electricity pricing in the United States operates on 2 tracks simultaneously. The first is the energy charge. You pay per kilowatt hour for every unit of power your chargers consume during the month. That part most operators expect. The second track is the demand charge, and this is the one that regularly shocks first-time operators into near-silence utilities charge commercial customers not just for how much power they used, but for the peak rate at which they drew it. Specifically, the highest 15-minute window of power consumption during the entire month sets your demand charge for that entire month. A single busy afternoon where multiple fast chargers are running simultaneously can produce a peak demand spike that results in thousands of dollars in additional charges. Charges that apply whether the chargers are busy or idle for the remaining 29 days. According to data from the United States Department of Energy's Joint Office of Energy and Transportation, demand charges can represent anywhere from 23% to 85% of total operating costs for a DC fast charging station. A 350 kilowatt charger running under a $20 per kilowatt monthly demand rate generates approximately $7,000 in demand charges per month, before a single kilowatt hour of energy cost is calculated. At low utilization, that fixed charge is spread across very few actual charging sessions, which means the operator is losing money on almost every individual car that plugs in. This is why fast chargers are not automatically more profitable than slow chargers, despite the higher per-session revenue. They require enormous grid connections. They trigger demand charge spikes. Their maintenance costs are substantially higher. A well-placed level 2 charger at a busy office park, quietly running at near full capacity for 6 to 8 hours a day, can generate better long-term financial returns than an expensive fast charger that sees sporadic use. In the current market, whether a charging station makes money or loses money is often determined not by how many cars show up, but by how skillfully the operator has captured available government subsidies. In the United States, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, funded through the Federal Infrastructure Law, pays up to 80% of eligible project costs for fast charging stations, placed along designated highway corridors. An operator building a 4-charger fast charging hub that would otherwise cost $400,000 in total capital investment can potentially reduce their net out-of-pocket cost to $80,000 by accessing this program. That reduction in upfront capital completely transforms the financial projections. A station that would take 15 years to recover its investment at full cost can recover in 3 to 4 years after federal grants are applied. The Inflation Reduction Act's Section 30C tax credit provides an additional 30% credit on the cost of charging equipment for projects in qualifying low-income or non-urban census tracts. Stacked on top of the infrastructure grants, this can further reduce the effective capital burden. In the United Kingdom, the workplace charging scheme has been updated to cover up to £500 per socket, while the local electric vehicle infrastructure fund is channeling significant capital toward public charging in underserved areas. The practical implication is straightforward. Operators who understand how to stack federal grants, state incentive programs, utility rebates, and tax credits can deploy stations at a fraction of the unsubsidized cost. Operators who simply call a contractor and start building without investigating the incentive landscape are competing at a permanent structural disadvantage. People imagine a charging station as a simple metal box that just sits there and earns money. In practice, they are sophisticated pieces of power electronics exposed to outdoor weather, constant physical use, and an endless variety of vehicle software systems trying to negotiate with them. Charging cables get pulled, bent, and damaged. Payment terminals malfunction. Software needs updating. Connectors wear out. Cooling systems on fast chargers require servicing. Vandalism happens. And when a charger goes offline, the revenue stops. But equally important, the reputation damage begins immediately. Modern EV drivers use apps like PlugShare to share real-time reliability data about every public charging station in the country. A station with a history of broken chargers accumulates negative reviews that redirect future customers to competitors permanently, software and network fees alone, covering the cloud platform, real-time monitoring, payment processing, and remote diagnostics, typically run between $15 and $50 per port per month, every month indefinitely. That cost arrives whether the charger is busy or empty. The global market for predictive maintenance systems for EV chargers was valued at $2.8 billion in 2025. The industry is investing heavily in sensors and software that detect failures before they cause full downtime. Operators using these systems report maintenance cost reductions of up to 28% and equipment life extensions of 15 to 20%, which at the capital cost of fast chargers is the difference between a viable business and a very expensive lesson. The most financially durable charging businesses in operation today are not primarily in the business of selling electricity. They are in the business of creating reasons for people to stop and then capturing the spending that happens during the wait. Retail studies across multiple markets have shown that the physical presence of a working charging station on a property increases local foot traffic by roughly 4% on average and drives up core retail sales by approximately 5%. That might sound small until you apply it to a high-volume supermarket or a large shopping center. The charger does not need to be profitable on its own. The charger is the magnet that brings in a wealthier, more frequent customer. Everything else follows. The most ambitious version of this model is the purpose-built charging travel plaza, a new category of roadside business that did not exist 10 years ago. These are not parking lots with a few chargers bolted in. They are designed destinations with ultra-fast charging, coffee shops, food service, clean restrooms, Wi-Fi, and digital advertising throughout. The operator owns the retail as well as the charging infrastructure. The electricity is the cost of attracting the customer. The coffee, the food, and the advertising are where the profit comes from. Tesla's supercharger network, which had nearly 39,000 fast-charging ports across the United States by mid-2026, started building exactly this kind of integrated facility at its highest volume locations. If you want to understand where the money truly accumulates in the charging ecosystem, do not look at the chargers. Look at who owns the ground underneath them. Landowners and commercial real estate operators who control high-traffic sites, near highway exits, adjacent to major retail centers in dense urban cores, hold the strongest position in the entire industry. Charging network operators need long-term leases on these sites to justify the capital investment. Landowners can negotiate revenue-sharing agreements, escalating rents, or options to take over the charging operation once utilization reaches a predictable level. They carry none of the technical risk, none of the maintenance responsibility, none of the equipment obsolescence exposure. The companies building and operating the networks, called charge point operators in industry terminology, capture the largest share of transaction revenue, but they also carry all of the operational weight. ChargePoint, the largest independent network in North America, posted full-year 2025 subscription revenue of $162.4 million, up 13% year-over-year. But its hardware revenue fell 8% in the same period, and the company continued to face the squeeze of high operational costs. Scale helps, but profitability at the network level remains a work in progress. The cleanest, least discussed financial position in the entire ecosystem belongs to the software providers, the companies that sell the cloud platforms, billing systems, and energy management software that every charging station must run. These businesses earn recurring monthly fees per port across tens of thousands of stations. Their costs do not increase with electricity prices. Their equipment does not break down, and every new station added to the grid adds another line of subscription revenue automatically. While smaller in absolute dollar terms than hardware or energy revenue, software margins in this sector are dramatically higher and far more durable. Here is what actually happens, depending on how well the station is set up. In the good scenario, you have secured a location at a busy highway rest area in a state with strong EV adoption, Colorado or Pennsylvania, among the highest utilization markets in the country. You installed 4 DC fast chargers at a total project cost of $400,000, but you applied for any VI funding and received 80% back, reducing your net investment to $80,000. Your chargers run at 35% utilization consistently. A well-sited DC fast charger at that level generates between $3,000 and $5,000 per month in charging revenue alone. With a small retail kiosk on-site and a digital advertising screen, you add another $1,500 monthly. Annual operating costs, electricity including demand charges, maintenance, software, insurance, and lease, total around $65,000. After costs, you are clearing roughly $35,000 per year on an $80,000 net investment. Payback in roughly 2 to 3 years. In the realistic scenario, you installed 2 DC fast chargers at a standalone site off a secondary road in a market where EV adoption is still early, at a full unsubsidized cost of $200,000. Utilization sits at 12%, close to the national average. At that level, the chargers generate perhaps $1,800 per month in revenue. Monthly demand charges alone hit $1,400. Add software fees, maintenance, insurance, and the lease, and annual operating costs exceed $45,000 against annual revenue of roughly $22,000. You are losing more than $20,000 per year. There is no path to profitability without a substantial increase in utilization or a significant reduction in costs, neither of which you control on your own timeline. The difference between these two outcomes is not luck. It is site selection, subsidy capture, and the decision to attach supplementary revenue streams from day one. The gap between a good year and a bad year in this business is enormous. It can easily swing $60,000 to $80,000 per station, depending on utilization and demand charges alone. The transition from petrol-powered cars to electric vehicles is genuinely happening. It is not a fad. The infrastructure needs to be built, and money will be made building it. But the money will go to operators who understand that owning an EV charger is not like owning a vending machine. It is a capital-intensive, operationally demanding infrastructure business where the margin for error is narrow, the hidden costs are large, and the difference between success and failure almost always comes down to a decision made before a single car ever plugged in.